This is Kam Lee from Massacre, and you're listening to The Dan Chan Show.
Hey Cam, how are you, mate?
I'm good.
Excellent. So first of all, how have things been for you personally over the last year and a half through the pandemic? Music aside, how have things been for you?
And as can be expected, everyone's kind of locked in or, getting out. Florida's kind of like a little bit looser than a lot of places. Our governor here is like saying, fuck all that stuff about lockdown and stuff. He's pretty much stand up against it and said, we're not going to have any of that going on here. So Florida's been a little bit more open, and you got to figure it's Florida. It's a place of Disney World and Universal Studios. So of course they're not going to shut it down. No, of course they want that tourist dollar.
And you've had the sunshine while you've been locked down as well, kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So it's okay. It's not been as bad. Although it's weird because you never know what to believe in the news. Last year they were saying Florida had the highest rate of COVID and the highest rates of death. And I just read yesterday morning that now we have the lowest.
Oh, really?
I'm like, yeah.
Is it because you killed everyone off?
I guess so. I guess that's what it is.
All those old people retiring there.
Yeah.
That's it. So let's get into it. You just dropped your new album Resurgence on the 22nd of October. And to be honest, mate, it's ensured my gym sessions have been very productive of late. One awesomely brutal album, so congratulations. This album,
Thank you.
This album was a chance for you to redeem yourself, and we'll get into that shortly. But boy, you did succeed. How's the response been since it came out? Are you pleased?
Yeah, it's overall actually surprised. There's been great responses overall. Of course, you got a few of the, naysayers and haters that are always going to be there. But, and for some reason, I'm one of those people that focuses on that all the time. I could read 100 reviews saying it's great, and there's that one prick that says something bad, and I'm like,
that's it.
What is it? But then I read into it and I see that they're being biased for whatever reason. They're not judging it upon the musical merits. They're judging it upon some personal agenda, and that's absolutely wrong. So if you want to judge something off a personal agenda, then you cannot have and say you have an open opinion about it.
Yeah, of course. And you said recently you feel it's the best it's been in years. What did you mean by this?
The band is actually it's very comfortable for one, and it feels productive.
Yeah.
Which every time I've been in this band up until now, it's never felt productive. And I'm not really going to talk bad about somebody, but I want to give a perspective that people can understand. What do I mean?
Yeah.
This band got back together at the end of 2016. Rick Ross contacted me to get the band back to going. So you could just say the entire time, 2017, 2018, up into half of 2019, Rick was in this band for 2.5 years. In 2.5 years, he did not write a single new song. So that's what I mean when I got this band, when I got this lineup finally together and things started working, already productively, we've written an entire album.
Yeah.
We have an EP that's already written, ready to come out.
Right.
We've been working on singles, self-release singles, and we're already now working on the second album.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, that shows you the difference between something that's productive and then something that was just like, what's going on here? 2.5 years and you haven't written one new song.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean.
We'll get into some more of that in a bit. But just before that, did the album have any pandemic delay issues with the writing and release? You just mentioned the writing, but did the recording have any delays or anything?
The recording didn't have delays, but I think the actual release date had delays because originally it was slated to come out in July. And it would have been awesome had that worked out. The reason why is because 2021 is the 30th year anniversary of the release of From Beyond. Yeah, From Beyond came out in July of 1991. Resurgence was supposed to come out in July of 2021. But because of the pandemic and all of the places all around the world with vinyl studios being shut down, what the label came to me and said is like, hey, we're not going to be able to meet the original release date. And they actually came to me and they gave me an ultimatum. They said, we could release it digitally in July and then later. And I was like, no. It's got to be everything all for nothing. And then they said, well, we can push it back to October. And I said, that works. That works. At least it's not going to be pushed back a year. Yeah, October, exactly. I can wait a couple months.
Yeah, that's cool. And you just touched upon it. Your 1991 album, From Beyond, is still one of the best. And I feel you've created a follow-up to that album. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, that was the intention. The intention was I had to find guys, and I had to get back in the mindset. And getting Mike Borders back in the band was also getting in that mindset of, look, Massacre went way off into left field after From Beyond because I lost creative control. It was I wasn't in the driver's seat any longer. Somebody else was taking over that, and they took it in a direction that I didn't necessarily believe in. So when I finally was in the captain's chair, I guess you could say, I said, we've got to bring it back to what it's missing, what the fans of 1991 and before that were fans of. We've got to bring it back to that. And that was a very key element to go and bring it back to that.
Is it difficult to keep that OG death metal sound sonically to the average death metal fan, and so they can jump straight in? Does it happen naturally, or is it a harder thing to ascertain?
For me, it's naturally because it's what I've always done. So for me, it's natural. I think it was natural for all the guys, especially these members that I got, because key thing was all of these members are Massacre fans. They're not just a musician that I picked up off the street and could play death metal. I mean, we went through that. I had that going on, and it didn't work. No. I got guys that I knew were Massacre fans, and they're not just Massacre fans of From Beyond. They were Massacre fans of the demo era. So they grew up listening to us from the time we were doing demos and then getting into From Beyond. And Rogan Johansson thinks that From Beyond is one of the greatest albums ever written. So it was really key element, and it was really good to have members that were like, oh, we love Massacre, so being a part of it is a special thing for them. So it's all special for everybody.
And when it comes to writing, do you have to get into a certain place and mindset to lay the ideas down, or do they just crop up anywhere?
It depends, actually, for Massacre, how I approached everybody and everybody approached me. The first thing was, what do you want to do? And I said, well, it has to retain that old school sound. And then they said, do you want us to write like a Florida death metal band? And I said, well, you guys are Swedish and I love Swedish death metal. I said, so don't feel that you have to stay within the parameters of Florida death metal. I said, yes, it has to have that foundation. It has to have that style, but you can veer off into a little bit of, like, I love Swedish death metal because it has that crushed punk kind of foundation, that D-beat stuff. And I love D-beat crushed punk, but it also has sort of a melodic flair to it. And I said, feel free to kind of incorporate that in there. So imagine if Massacre met Entombed and they had a baby. That's kind of like how I approached it.
I like it. And let's talk about the album artwork. How did that come about? Because there's some Lovecraft-inspired art there, isn't there?
Yes, it is. Actually, I was in the early talks with the label, and they kind of asked me, they said, who would you want for the artist? And I said, I really like this guy that did the Autopsy cover. He's done the Slayer cover. He did Creator. He's done some really cool covers. And they were like, Wes Benscotter? And I was like, yeah, that's the guy. And they was like, well, we know him. And I was like, okay. 4 hours later, I got an email. After that conversation, 4 hours later, I got an email from Wes. He said, hey, this is Wes. I'm, introducing myself and to say I'm a big Massacre fan. He's like, what would you like me to do? And I wrote back one word. I wrote back Lovecraft. And he wrote back really big letters, all capital, yes. And I knew right then and there he was excited. And he wrote back to me, he said, I've always wanted to do Lovecraft, but I never had an avenue to do it in. I never had a reason to do it. And I said, well, now you do. I said, so feel free to do what you do. And he asked me, what do you want me to do? And I said, like I do with my musicians, I said, I want you to stay with your style. I like your surrealism. I like how you incorporate human bones or skulls into your artwork, but it's more surreal. It's not based actually on something that you would see. And I want you to kind of do that, but with Lovecraft aesthetics. I want you to bring that Lovecraft aesthetics. And he first sent me a sketch, and I loved the sketch. I thought it was great. I was like, yep, this is it. But then he really surprised me when he did the final artwork. When I finally saw it, he went above and beyond what I expected. And I was really, really taken back. And I was like, this is awesome. This is great. You hit the nail right on the head.
It's so cool. It really is. Can't wait to see that on a T-shirt, you know? Mm-hmm. So you got in bed with one of the best metal labels around, Nuclear Blast. How did that come about? We just touched on it.
Basically, in America, Geraldo, who runs the mail, I guess he got a promotion, so now he's doing all of Nuclear Blast. But during the time when we first met, he emailed me, and then he wanted to talk. He said, can I call you? I said, yeah. I started talking to him, and he's a huge Massacre fan. He's like, I grew up when I was in high school. We got From Beyond, and it was literally like that. It was just like that. And then get talking more personally outside of the music and finding out that we had a lot in common. I'm a big nerd as far as like horror goes and comic books and stuff like that. And we just started talking geeks talk and found out we had a lot in common. And it just was, we hit it off on that level rather than on a musical or business level. We were just hitting it off talking about collecting toys, collecting comic books and all this kind of stuff. And it was just like having a conversation with your buddy. It wasn't like a business conversation.
So let's go into some nitty gritty here. You had a near on 2-year battle to own the name of the band. With this lengthy, costly process over, was it like full steam ahead when you were, as soon as you got the rights to it? And were you already preparing for what could happen if you succeeded, or was it like a sketchy time?
It was a sketchy time. And unfortunately, I think that led to why Rick eventually quit. Because he got back in touch with me, like I said, in end of 2016, December. It was December. And he was excited to try and get going. And I was testing the waters, seeing how it was going to go. It seemed really well. We had a meeting, and he got a little overzealous on that meeting. And he took pictures on his phone, and he started posting them on his social networks. And the next thing you know, Blabbermouth picks it up and says, Kam Lee's back in Massacre. Although it was just a meeting. It really wasn't about that. Huh. Well, that started a big, controversy. Terry Butler and Bill Andrews contacted and said, oh, no, they can't be called Massacre. We own the trademark. And it got to kind of be very petty. And I said, on the side, I said, look, I'm not going to fight this battle, but I am going to look into it. And I have lawyers. So I had my lawyer look into it legally. He got back with me a couple of days later and he said, they don't own the trademark. It's a bluff. And I said, well, since they don't really own it and they're quick to threaten us, I said, let me go and do the right thing. Let me go through the legal process of doing it. And I got my lawyer to start it. And it literally it takes years. It took almost 2 years. It took a year and a half to actually get done. And the reason why, you can't just say, oh, I like the color brown, or I like the word for the color brown. I want to own that and just go register. You can't just own it the next day, which is literally what they were trying to say they did. Right. So I had to go through a process, and it goes through all the courts process. Of course, this is the United States, and so that takes a long. They don't rush anything. No. There's like, we'll work it when we get it in. We'll work it when we get it in. It took literally 6 months before it even got looked at after registration. After 6 months, and they finally sign off on it, say, okay, this guy wants to own the name Massacre. Then it goes through another 4 months of contestant, a time where somebody can come in and say, well, I want to use it, and this is why, and show a reason why. But I had all the reasons why. I want to use it in commerce. I want to use it as the band name. It went through all that process, and then it has to go through the court system after that, which that takes forever. Yeah. And that is all court fees and everything you have to pay out of pocket and having your lawyer go back and forth. So it literally took, like I said, a year and 8 months. It was a complete year and 8 months before it was actually finally, hey, you got it. Yeah. And I remember my lawyer emailing me that day and saying exactly that. Yay, you got it. It's finally yours. As soon as that happened, I wanted to start. And that was in November of 2018. Because I remember clear as day. It was in November. As soon as that happened, I said, okay, we're all in the clear. We own the name. Let's start booking shows. By that time, as I said, I'm not going to speak for him, or I don't know what was going on in his mind, but it seemed to me and Mike Borders that Rick at that time no longer cared really about the band anymore. And I started booking shows, and he was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll show up and play the show. And it was a very, just like I said, I don't know what was going through his mind, but he just seemed like his heart wasn't into it anymore, and he just doesn't want to be in it anymore. And it was showing. It was beginning to show. And after a couple of months of going out on the road and the poor performances that was happening, finally we pulled him to the side and we said, "Hey, what do you want to do? Because you've got to take into consideration everybody that's here. You know, you got to take me into consideration. You got to take Mike Borders, who we contacted after 35 years, into consideration. Mike doesn't have to do this. Mike's well off. He doesn't have to do this, but he's doing it because he wants to.
Yeah.
You can't just off and let, not care." And after that conversation, he was like, "I quit." He's like, "Okay, all right."
Yeah. Wow.
It was unfortunate, but that's what happened.
Does it feel more like cathartic now? You've got this full control. Does it feel like it's got more of a reason and more weight behind it now, Massacre?
It feels, I don't want to be narcissistic and say it's all my game now. No. I've always tried to be fair, but there was always obviously agendas that even when I wasn't in the band, it still failed. Yeah. I mean, they got together in 2011 through 2014 without me, and it still failed. And, you want to go on to Blabbermouth or whatever avenue that they said they were going back and forth and fighting each other then. Yeah. So unfortunately, people are people, and for whatever reasons. And now it just feels comfortable because the people that I'm working with now are people I've worked with, like Roger Johansson, for 15 years. Yeah. I mean, I worked with Roger for 15 years. We haven't never had an argument or a problem. Yeah. I've worked with Johnny for years now, and Scott I've known for years. So everybody that I work with, and Brian Jar, he's been great and worked with me in many of my Grotesquerie and even my solo project he's been on. Yeah. So, and I've known Mike for all these years. I've kept in touch with Mike. So it's finally working. I say it's comfortable now because there's no hidden agendas and there's nobody having an ego.
That's good.
And that's why it feels good.
It's going to work.
And everybody has an open discussion saying, getting angry at somebody else. Everybody's got an open discussion and everyone's on the same page. And I get that's the first time this band has ever felt that it's on the same page.
Yeah, cool. How important is it for you guys to be quite controversial in your lyrics and your imagery and your videos especially? Is that important to you guys? Do you go out with that intention?
I didn't literally go out with that, especially, I know you're probably talking about Return of the Corpse Grinder. I didn't originally go out with that, but I thought about this. I said, with the song, what the song lyrics are about, especially Return of the Corpse Grinder, being based on Corpse Grinder, and what the subject matter is, I said, we can't PG-13 it. No. We can't do we can't do the YouTube friendly. Yeah. I was actually surprised it got played on YouTube. They did a censored version. I was happy what Jeffrey Sasson did. Again, I didn't direct Jeffrey Sasson. I told him what I wanted. He's the director, and I said, "Look, this is what I'm looking for." I really like the German films Necromantic, both those films, and what Jorg did in those films, the director of those films. So I want to bring that aesthetic. And I kind of told him what the lyrics were originally based on, which is the crimes of Ed Gein, which Ed Gein was a true serial killer that cinematic serial killers like Norman Bates from Psycho or Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and even Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs are based off of the real serial killer Ed Gein. And I said, Corpse Grinder lyrics are about Ed Gein, about him being a necrophiliac. Yeah. And I said, so it kind of, let's go with a theme that's about Ed Gein and about necrophilia and having that necromantic kind of feel. And you can't not do that in a PG friendly way.
No way. Now you reach into your sci-fi horror themes when you're writing. Are there any good films you've seen recently?
Yes. Lots of good films.
Let's have a couple.
I mean, as far as Lovecraft stuff, I really liked the Colorado Space with the new one with Nicolas Cage. I liked it. It's different than the story, but any adaptation of Lovecraft is always different. So that one was really good. As far as new horror goes, the most recent thing I've seen that actually was like, wow, that's actually really decent was trying to think of a good one. This is off the top of my, there's been a couple I've seen, but not ones that I just really say, wow, that's awesome. I haven't seen like the newest stuff. Like I haven't seen the new Halloween yet. I haven't seen The Conjuring 3 yet. Yeah. I've been trying to catch up a lot on a lot of my DVDs. Yeah. and I always go back to the old stuff. But I'd say the most recent thing that I've seen is a lot of the Korean horror stuff.
Yeah.
And I love Japanese horror. So
have you seen Squid Game?
Oh yes, I did see that. I thought it was great. I don't really consider it horror, but it definitely was.
I know it wasn't horror, but in its gem, being Korean and everything while we're there, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, that was a really cool. I liked it. Once I started watching it, I was glued to it. I had to marathon it. I had to go through the whole thing.
Same. So the band has almost got two heads, really, because you've got like the studio band and you've got a live band. How's that working with you?
It actually works really well. I knew when I went in to do the album, picking the guys that I did, that they wouldn't necessarily be all the guys that play live. I knew that right off the bat. Because I thought I have to have an album that kicks ass. I have to have an album that really is worthy. And I got the members I knew that would bring that album, make that album possible. But I also knew that some of those members, like Rogan Johansson and Brian Jar, they're not going to tour. They don't tour themselves normally. Johnny just said he would tour with us if we do Europe. So Johnny definitely will be a part of our lineup live. So Johnny's definitely on board. Scott said he would if he's not busy with his other bands, because he's got Memoriam, he's got As the World Dies, he's doing stuff with Benediction. So if he's not busy with that, he could join us. There's possibilities. But we do have a live lineup that I'm working with now. And so far, we've done rehearsals. We haven't played live yet. Our first live show is actually next week, November 6th in Atlanta, Georgia. Cool. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to go pretty well, though. I'm pretty confident.
Good luck with that. So with all that in mind, what touring plans do you have for the States and maybe Europe?
Okay, well, the States right now, we're talking to some agents, hopefully getting something set up. It's so touch and go because of COVID.
Of course.
Europe, we've had talks back and forth with some agents, but then every time we get something settled, it cancels or gets rescheduled. So we're like, oh, shit. So right now, what I do know is we're still on all the Death Fest that we've been on for the past 2 years. So UK Death Fest, the Maryland Death Fest, the Canadian Death Fest, all of those that we've been on in our slot, we've kept because it keeps getting shuffled. It keeps getting shuffled. And we keep telling Ryan, who's the promoter of that, don't take us off. We'll stay on it. We'll stay on it. So
what's your favorite place to play in the world?
Well, my favorite place to play in the world, because I've been over there so many times, is probably Germany. Anywhere in in Europe is fun. Even Barcelona, I've been there. So it was fun to do that, play in Spain. I've never been to Australia or New Zealand or even Asia, which is actually kind of funny because I'm part Asian. So I've always wanted to go there, especially Japan. So that's a dream. But we just recently played South America. So I played down in Chile, played down in Peru. That was pretty great. I mean, Peru was amazing. Chile was amazing. They were maniacs down there. And when I go to new places, I love eating the food. That's like my thing. I want to eat the food. So I had real Chilean sea bass in Chile.
Nice.
It was spot on. It was great.
So this could be controversial, but who's best for metal, Europe or the States?
Europe. I'm Europe.
No deliberation there. Straight.
No. Europe. I mean, there's some really good spots in the States, but it's just sporadic. And the States is the States, and it's got those little pockets. But you're never going to get a festival like Wacken in the States. Never, ever will. And I was lucky enough to play Wacken back in 2008. I'm dying to play it again. I would love to do it. I want to get it under my belt one more time, get another notch of Wacken, Wacken notch in my belt. I love it. But that'd be great. I love going over there. It's much more appreciated in Europe than the States, because the States is very, very throwaway. I think it always has been. Scenes are like here 1 minute, gone the next minute. The only people that stay in the scenes are old guys like me that have been doing it forever.
So, talking personally, with all that aggression to one side, is there a softer side to you, Kam? Maybe you dig any chilled music, ice creams and walks in the park? How do you relax?
Yeah. I mean, all of Massacre's love songs. You know that? It's all love songs. No, I'm big into cats. I love cats. Yeah. I love cats and dogs, but I own cats. I'm a cat owner, so I'm really big into cats. I'm one of the metalheads that like cats or loves cats. So I love my cats. I love my wife that I've been together with for 26 years. So I mean, she's my best friend. You know, so we have our geeky moments where we just chill out and watch Squid Game or something like that together. Nice
one, mate. Is there any new music you're checking out recently?
Yes, was just checking this out. Stygian Dark. It is actually it's Roga Johansson is in this as well as David Ingram from Benediction.
Oh right,
So I've been listening to this for the past week because David sent it to me and I got it, and it's pretty awesome. It's that old school death metal. Awesome. So that's as far as death metal goes. But actually, believe it or not, on my downtime, I don't really listen to much death metal. A lot of people ask, well, what do you listen to? I'm really big into, since I'm a horror movie fan, I love soundtrack music, and I love certain soundtracks that I'll get into. Guys that are right now, I've been on this whole John Carpenter kick. Like John Carpenter's putting out all these like music CDs and music albums, and I just been kind of just delving into John Carpenter at night when I go to bed. My wife's like, what are you putting that on again for? I'm like, I love it. I go to sleep to it. She's like, you go to sleep to creepy music? I'm like, yes, I do.
That's me. So I love it. Yeah. So here's an interesting one, a couple more left. I've just watched a segment on Revolver with a bunch of people discussing the heaviest riff of all time. What do you think is the heaviest riff of all time? You know, that whole stink face thing. What is it?
That's a good one. I'm always going to go back to, because it's simple to me is the best simple stuff. And I'm always going to go back to Tom G. Warrior came up with some of the most memorable riffs, especially. I love the Procreation of the Wicked. That riff, when it just comes in, it's just so sick. Yeah. Like and the title, Procreation of the Wicked, I just like, you think of like nasty old witches fucking to that fucking, like a witch and a warlock just getting it on to that riff. That dun, 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 dun. So I'm gonna say Tom G. Warrior, that was the guy that just got me loving metal. Those dirty, ugly, simple riffs.
Wicked. Yep. Now finally, and I'm sure you got a lot to say, what's the message to fans new and old?
The message? Love. Yeah. Love. Yeah, the love of misanthropy.
Well, Kam, it's a pleasure, my friend. Congrats on the new album, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the road at some point.
Thank you.